watching him, holding his hand. Her son, the joy of her life. The doctor had told him laughter was good medicine, and he'd latched onto that and taken it seriously, coming with a story each day to make her laugh. She'd ask about his morning, but in the last couple days he'd started to avoid answering that question. It wasn't going well at home, and he wanted to be her guardian and not tell her. She brushed her fingers through his hair. It would need to be cut soon. She hoped he didn't end up having to do it himself. His father wouldn't think of it. "Mom?" She had drifted on him. The story was over. She smiled an apology. "I'm laughing inside, honey." It wasn't very funny." That drew a chuckle. Her strength was fading, and she could hear the wheeze returning. Marcus's hand in hers squeezed tight. "Shall I get the nurse?" he asked, his voice calm, but his eyes were anxious. 2 minutes with him, it wasn't enough. But the reality couldn't be denied. "Yes." He moved to slip his hand from hers, and instead she tightened her hold. "Before you do, I want my kiss." He grinned. He was a boy again, instead of the solemn young man. He leaned across the railing to rub his nose against hers, then kissed both cheeks European style. "Love you, Mom." "I love you, too." She held him tight. "And Jesus loves you." "I know." He went to get the nurse. The simple faith of a child. She was grateful. He'd found something strong enough to get him through what was coming. She panted for breath. They would clear her lungs again, and soon would have no choice but to put her on the respirator. She feared she'd never come off it. The doctor's reassuring words couldn't change what she knew in her spirit was coming. She gripped the roses, and a thorn pierced her finger. Despite the fever, she was shivering again. She would be leaving Marcus with only his father. It was a heavy burden to place on an 8-year-old's faith. A single tear escaped to slide down her cheek. She'd already cried for her husband and her son, for everything lost that could have been. Tears now would literally choke her. "Jesus, be my son's guardian. He needs you." Renee closed her eyes and focused on living one more day. Marcus scuffed his tennis shoes against the tile floor and stared out the waiting room window, wiping furiously at the tears. He had to stop crying. They'd see, and they wouldn't let him visit anymore. The thought was a panic rising in his chest. He gulped back a sob and worked his jaw. She wasn't getting better. He had to pray harder. Chapter 1. U.S. Marshal Marcus O'Malley tucked the cellular phone tighter against his shoulder as he studied the latest photographs sent by the North Washington District Office. 18 faxes. The picture quality grainy at best, the information about each individual sketchy. Each had made threats against the judges attending this July conference at the Chicago Jefferson Renaissance Hotel. The pages crinkled as only cheap fax paper could as he thumbed through them, memorizing each one. "Kate, what are you not telling me?" He was trying to have a telephone conversation with his sister while he worked, and it was interesting. He would have said aggravating, but he loved Kate too much to get annoyed with her easily. His sister, Kate O'Malley, could be clear or ambiguous at will. As a hostage negotiator, she knew how to choose her words, and she was being deliberately obtuse at the moment. It was 7:05 p.m., Friday night. Supreme Court Justice Philip Roosevelt would give the keynote speech at 8 p.m. before an audience of over 1,200, and Marcus didn't have time to read between the lines. Kate was trying to tell him something without breaking a confidence. That told him it was family-related, and it was important enough that she was willing to go to the edge of that confidence to let him know about it. That told him it was serious. "She was supposed to tell you last night." Marcus flipped back to the 9th fax and frowned. Something about the picture was triggering a glimmer of a memory. Tom Libor, Caucasian, early 40s, clean-shaven. It was an old memory, and he could feel it flitting just beyond his recall. He didn't forget cases he'd worked. Maybe something his partner had worked. He scrawled a note beside the photo requesting the incident report be pulled. He passed the stack of faxes back to his deputy. Who? Jennifer, Lisa, or Rachel. In a family of 7, Kate had just cut the list in half. The 7 of them were related, but not by blood, by choice. At the orphanage, Trevor House. The decision to become their own family had made a lot of sense. 2 decades later, it still did. As the oldest, 38, he accepted the guardianship of the group. As the next in line, Kate protected it, kept her finger on the family pulse. He didn't mind the responsibility, but it often arrived at inconvenient times. What was going on? I've said too much already. Forget I called. Kate, Marcus. Her own frustration came back at him with a bite in her voice. I didn't ask to be the one she chose to tell. I'm stuck. I'll push her to tell you. It's the best I can do. The family was close, but Kate, she was the one he talked with in the middle of the night. They'd shared the dark days. They were the oldest, the closest, and there was no one he trusted more than her. How serious is it? He retrieved his black tuxedo jacket from the back of a folding chair. He'd be standing behind the Supreme Court Justice during the speech, doing his best to look interested while he did his real job. Decide who in the crowd might want to shoot the old man. I'm pacing the floors at night. Marcus, reaching to straighten the lapel of his jacket, stopped. Kate had the nerve to walk into situations where a guy held a bomb. The last thing she did was overreact. Something that had her that worried. His eyes narrowed. Who, Kate? He couldn't take the weight off her shoulders if he didn't know. If Kate had given her word, she would never say, but he couldn't just leave it. He needed to know. Can you get free later tonight? Time was tight. This was the biggest judicial conference of the year, but he wasn't about to say no. Quinn would do him a favor. The banquet and its aftermath should be wrapped up by 10:30. I can meet you after that. We'll join you, even if I have to drag her there, Kate replied grimly. Deal. And even if it's just you, come over. I'll be there. Besides, it's probably the only way I'll get to see Dave. Marcus spotted FBI Special Agent Dave Richmond on the other side of the room, deep in a discussion with the hotel security chief. The conference had attracted explosive media attention. The Supreme Court was about to go conservative, with the announcement by the president of a nominee to replace retiring Justice Luke Blackwood. The landscape of the law across the nation would forever change. Most of the judges on the president's short list were in attendance. Dave had drawn the unenviable job of trying to figure out how to control and manage the media access. He's here. Do you want to talk to him? Dave and Kate were dating, Dave having even gone so far as to formally ask all the guys in the family for permission. It was serious on her side, too. Kate didn't let just anybody outside the family get close to her heart. No, I know you're swamped. I just miss him. She was in love. Everyone in the family knew that. Her face brightened when she saw Dave, and that impassive control she kept around her emotions, so necessary for her job, disappeared. Even her southern accent intensified. Marcus kidded her about being love-struck, and she teased him back about hovering. That was okay. She needed a big brother watching out for her. Then you definitely need to come over tonight. I'll tell Dave to expect you. Let me surprise him. Besides, knowing my job, I'll probably get yanked by a page on my way over there. She sounded irked, and he enjoyed that. Love can be so rough. Just wait. Your turn is coming. He wasn't seeing anyone now, and short of someone colliding with him, at the moment he didn't have time to notice anyone. His hands were full with his job and the O'Malley clan. But knowing Kate, she'd probably try to set him up the first chance she got. She loved to meddle in his life, just like he did in her.